Thank you for your testimony. We'll now proceed under the 5-minute rule with questions, and I will recognize myself for 5 minutes to start off. Mr. Vorendran, in September of last year, Howard University was forced to shut down much of its web services after a suspected ransomware attack took over its systems. K-12 schools are also enduring an increase in cyber attacks against their systems. Ransomware attacks in particular surged last year and continued in January. On average, education victims paid over $100,000 in ransom payments to decrypt their data and regain network access. Why are schools and higher education institutions a growing target, and who are the most common perpetrators of cyber attacks on schools?
Sir, I'm sorry, what was the second part of your question?
Who are the most common perpetrators of cyber attacks on schools?
Okay. Sir, what we found is that institutions or organizations with low cybersecurity budgets, and I think public schools for the most part would fall into that space, not because they're not trying, but the resources that are available to a K-12 school may be different than the resources available to a multinational company. It is hard to keep up with all the patching requirements, all the new operating systems. And so what we see is cyber criminals really preying on targets of opportunity. We see these criminals looking for opportunities more than precision attacks against one specific entity or one specific sector. And so when those criminals find a vulnerability in a traditional sector, they will continue to exploit it in hopes that they can make a lot of money off of it. In terms of who the most common perpetrators are, the bottom line is the most common perpetrators are cyber criminals. They are global, but the most heavy concentration is through Russian and surrounding countries in the Russian territory.
Thank you. In 2016, Russia attacked Ukraine's Ukrenergo, I hope I pronounced that right, electrical network, succeeding in causing a blackout, but failing to destroy the system. This attack was noteworthy because it was a case where the perpetrator attempted to use software to permanently damage hardware. Can you describe for us how software could be capable of destroying a hardware system? And do we know how many entities have developed or are seeking to develop this capacity?
One of the questions we typically ask is there a bleed over between what we would define as the IT and the OT system, essentially the information technology and the operational element of a company, of an organization, of an entity. And so firmware and hardware, different than software, still has the potential to have a lot of vulnerabilities that can be exploited by cyber adversaries. So the software bleed over would really be a question of, can the software being exploited actually affect the operational component? To your second part, it's really, really challenging question to answer what the scope and scale of those are. We just would point back to the fact that undoubtedly cyber criminals are going to work to find vulnerabilities where they can have the biggest impact, cause the biggest disruption, or make the most money off of those vulnerabilities being exploited.
It's been widely reported that on March 18th, the FBI warned the federal government of Russian hackers scanning the systems of 5 U.S. energy companies as well as other critical infrastructure. What's the significance of a foreign power scanning networks in our energy sector, and have instances of Russian scanning increased in the last month?
So, sir, instances of Russian scanning have increased. The significance of that is I would draw a comparison to traditional crime. In order for a criminal to conduct a bank robbery, it's undoubtedly true that that criminal is going to likely conduct reconnaissance surveillance to understand when the bank may be open, when the bank may be closed, what the security posture looks like. And the scanning of the scanning as you described it, really is a reconnaissance phase to understand what the net defense side of that company would look like and whether there are vulnerabilities that can or cannot be exploited. It's an extremely important part of the overall attack cycle.
Thank you. And my final question, can you explain for us the different ways the FBI is expanding its responses to cyber threats and how it can better serve victims of cyber attacks?
Sure. We always encourage a couple of key things. The first is to build a relationship with your FBI field office. We are all over this country and international as well. But for companies in this country or organizations, K through 12 schools would be included there. We encourage those entities to build a proactive relationship with their FBI cyber squad in their area. We'd also encourage them to build a proactive relationship with their CISA rep in the area, because CISA is going to be very helpful as well and has some helpful resources. Independently of the government, all of those organizations need to have a defined incident response plan. They need to know who they're going to call in the moment they become a victim. They need to know who their insurance company is, who their attorney is, who they're going to call at the FBI, who they're going to call at CISA. We recommend that those are exercised every 90 days, not that they're drafted by a general counsel and put on the shelf and never thought of again. And then the third thing we say is, if you do become a victim, we would ask that you report. You can report to CISA, you can report to the Bureau. It doesn't much matter to us. We'll synchronize on the backside to make sure that those companies have the weight of the U.S. government. In terms of things that we can do, sir, the list is potentially endless. We've been asked to help with the media before. We're willing to do that. We've been asked to help with victim services. If somebody's not going to get a paycheck, we're willing to do that. We've been asked to help take servers offline. We're willing to do that. We've been asked to simply take the indicators of compromise that are provided by that organization's third-party incident response firm and then move on to our investigation. We're happy to do that. It really is a menu of options that we can provide in that moment.
Thank you. My time has expired.